Have you ever heard of the famous song, Amazing Grace? Have you ever wondered what life the composer lived to ever pen such beautiful lyrics and hymn? This is the story of the man who wrote the song that touched our hearts. Once there was a young man named John Newton who lived in London in the 1700s. His mother was a godly woman who read him Bible stories, taught him to pray, and filled his heart with hymns about Jesus. But when John was only 6 years old, his mother died. And when she died, his faith died with her. At 11 years old, John went to sea with his father. The ocean became his new home, but the lessons he learned there were not from the Bible. He learned to curse. He learned to drink. He learned to live like God didn't exist. By the time he was a young man, John Newton was mocking Christianity. He would laugh at other sailors who believed in God. He corrupted them. He lived like there was no heaven, no hell, no judgment coming. Then his life got even darker. John was forced into the Royal Navy. He tried to escape and was captured. They flogged him publicly, whipped him in front of everyone as punishment. After that, he ended up on a slave ship heading to West Africa. In Africa, John became a slave himself. A local ruler named Princess Pi enslaved him. For months, he was treated worse than an animal. He was starved, he was beaten, he was humiliated. He crawled on his hands and knees, begging for scraps of food like a dog. Finally, a ship captain who knew John's father came looking for him. The captain found John barely alive, broken, and brought him back on board to take him home to England. On that journey back, something began to stir in John's heart. Lying in his bunk at night, he started remembering his mother's prayers, the hymns she used to sing, the Bible stories she told him before she died. He thought, maybe God hasn't forgotten me. Maybe there's still hope. He began to pray again. Small prayers at first, uncertain prayers. He started reading a book called The Imitation of Christ that was on the ship. And slowly, a tiny seed of faith began to grow in his hardened heart. But when John reached England and recovered his strength, you would think he became a changed man right away. He didn't. Instead, John Newton became something even worse. He became a slave trader. Picture this: John standing on the deck of his own slave ship, looking down at hundreds of human beings chained in the dark cargo hold below. Men, women, and children, stolen from their families. Every morning, John would gather his crew and lead them in prayer. He would read from the Bible. He would ask God to bless their journey. And then, after praying, he would go below deck and inspect his cargo. Human souls, people made in the image of God, and he treated them like property. John told himself, at least I treat them better than other captains do. But he was still selling human beings. He was still destroying families. He was still making money from human misery. For years, this was John Newton's life. Pray in the morning, profit from evil in the afternoon, and it didn't even bother him anymore. But God was not finished with John Newton. March 10th, 1748. John's ship, the Greyhound, is caught in a massive storm in the North Atlantic. The ship is lurching violently. Water is crashing over the deck. The cargo is shifting, threatening to flip the ship over. John grips the wheel with both hands, his knuckles white. He's been steering for 11 hours straight. His arms are shaking. His strength is running out. And he thinks, this is it. We're all going to die. In that moment, something inside John Newton breaks. Not the ship, his heart. He cries out, Lord, have mercy on us. It was the most desperate, honest prayer he had prayed since he was a child. And then, something miraculous happened. The wind began to calm. The waves started to settle. The storm began to pass. After 4 more weeks at sea, barely surviving, they finally reached land in Ireland. John Newton stepped off that ship a different man. He later wrote, "On that day, The Lord came from on high and delivered me out of deep waters. For the rest of his life, he would mark March 10th as his spiritual birthday, the day he truly surrendered everything to God. But here's what's incredible about God's grace. The change was not instant. John continued working in the slave trade for 6 more years after that storm. But slowly, gradually, God was transforming his heart. He started reading the Bible seriously. He studied theology. He began treating the enslaved people with genuine kindness, real kindness, not just the bare minimum. And finally, he couldn't do it anymore. He left the sea. He quit the slave trade, and at 39 years old, John Newton became a minister. It was in a small church in Olney, England, that John sat down one day and wrote a song that will echo in our hearts forever. Every single word came from his own life. He was the wretch. He was the one who was lost. He was the one who was blind to the evil he had done. But grace, amazing, undeserved, impossible grace, had found him. But the story doesn't end there. In his 70s, John Newton became one of the loudest voices fighting to end slavery. The man who had once made money from human trafficking now spent his final years trying to destroy it. He mentored a young politician named William Wilberforce, who eventually passed the law that ended the British slave trade. In 1807, at 82 years old, John Newton lived to see it happen. The very trade he had once participated in became illegal throughout the entire British Empire. Before he died, Newton said something powerful. He said, "My memory is nearly gone, but I remember 2 things, that I am a great sinner and that Christ is a great Savior." Friends, here is the lesson that will change your life. No one is too far gone for God's grace. If God could transform a slave trader into the man who wrote Amazing Grace, if he could turn John Newton's greatest shame into his greatest ministry, then he can transform anyone, including you. Maybe right now you're thinking about your own past, your own mistakes, your own dark chapters. Maybe you feel like you've gone too far, done too much, hurt too many people. Maybe you think, God could never forgive me for what I've done. John Newton would look you in the eye and say, Amazing Grace is for people exactly like us, for wretches who need saving, for people who were lost but can be found, for people who were blind but now can see. The same God who calmed that storm in 1748 is the same God who can calm the storm in your heart today. Amazing Grace is not just a song. It's God's promise that no one is beyond redemption. Don't wait. Cry out to Him today. He's waiting to save you. God bless.